I'm a university student, 22 years old, and I live in a small apartment on the edge of town. My campus is about 3 hours away, and since I had a late seminar that evening, I decided to drive back home instead of staying the night in my dorm. I've taken that highway countless times, and I knew every turn, every gas station, and every long, empty stretch where the only lights are from your own car. The sky was clear, and I figured with my thermos of coffee and a couple of podcasts downloaded, I'd be home before 2 a.m. About halfway through the drive, I passed through a tiny town. Really just a gas station, a diner, and some closed shops. As I left the town behind and got back onto the highway, I noticed a man walking along the side of the road. He had a large cardboard sign with the word South written in uneven black letters. It caught my attention because not many people hitchhike out here anymore. At first I kept driving, but something about the way he stood there, still, almost too still, made me slow down. I told myself I was just being paranoid. Maybe he really needed help. I hesitated for a moment, then pulled over. He jogged up to the car. His clothes looked worn, mud on the bottom of his jeans, an old dusty brown jacket zipped up to his neck even though the night wasn't that cold. He had a scruffy beard and his eyes seemed tired, but not in a drunk or high kind of way. Just tired. He didn't smile. He just nodded and said, "Appreciate it," as he opened the door and got in. I asked him where he was headed. He said, "South, as far as you can take me." We drove in silence for the first few minutes. I tried to break the awkwardness by asking general questions, where he was from, what he did. His answers were short, said he'd been traveling for a while, moving from place to place. No mention of a job, family, or friends. Every now and then I glanced over at him. He kept his bag on his lap and didn't take off the jacket. He didn't even adjust the air vents, just sat there, staring out the window or at the dashboard. Something about his stillness felt unnatural. We passed through a long stretch of woods. No exits, no gas stations, no houses, just miles of trees on both sides. I was starting to regret my decision. I told myself I was overthinking it, but my grip on the steering wheel tightened anyway. Then he spoke. "You always pick up strangers this late?" he asked, still looking out the window. His voice was calm, almost too calm. It caught me off guard. I said, "Not really. Just didn't feel right leaving someone out here alone." He didn't respond, just nodded slowly and kept quiet. I didn't know if he appreciated it or found it weird. After a few minutes, he asked if I could take a back road exit about 10 minutes ahead. He said it was faster and avoided the construction zone that was supposed to be near the highway's southern end. That part was true. There was construction there. But something in my gut told me not to take that detour. I told him I'd rather stay on the highway. I used construction as an excuse to stay alert and not fall asleep. He didn't argue. He just looked at me, then out the window again. That stare, it made me uneasy. It wasn't angry, but it wasn't neutral either. It was like he was trying to figure something out. The silence started to grow heavier. I turned the volume up on my podcast a bit, hoping to lighten the tension, but after about a minute, he asked me to turn it off. Said the voices were distracting. I turned it off, not wanting to make things worse. I glanced at the clock, 1:20 a.m. We drove for another 15 minutes before I noticed him fiddling with something in his coat pocket. Not obvious, just a small movement. His hand went in, stayed there for a while, and I could see him gripping something. My mind started racing. Was it a weapon? A phone? Something else? I pretended not to notice and kept my eyes on the road. I figured if I panicked, I'd make things worse. So I kept driving, slowly formulating a plan. If anything happened, I could veer into a ditch to shake him off, or hit the brakes hard. But I also didn't want to escalate something that might just be in my head. Then I made a small mistake. I asked him what was in the bag on his lap. I tried to keep it casual, like I was just curious. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "Just clothes and tools." "What kind of tools?" I asked. I couldn't help it. He waited a moment before replying. "Does it matter?" "No, I guess not," I said quickly, trying to brush it off. He stared at me for a long second, then looked away. I could feel the tension in the car like a thick fog. I was starting to get genuinely scared. My exit was still 20 minutes away. I thought about pulling into a gas station, but we hadn't passed one in miles. I didn't want to stop on the side of the road either, not out here. Then he asked something I didn't expect. "You ever had someone try to kill you before?" I froze for a second, but tried to keep my face neutral. "No, can't say I have. Why?" "No reason," he said. "Just a question." We didn't talk after that. I kept driving, but I checked the rearview mirror more often, watching for lights behind us. I had no signal, so calling anyone was out of the question. My phone battery was at 18%. I silently prayed we'd reach somewhere populated before anything happened. 5 minutes later, we passed a small rest stop. It was dimly lit, just a couple of vending machines and some benches under a flickering light. But there was a maintenance truck parked near the far edge. I took a chance. "I'm stopping here for a quick bathroom break," I said. He didn't protest. I parked, took my keys, and stepped out. I didn't go to the bathroom. Instead, I walked toward the maintenance truck, hoping someone was inside. I knocked on the driver's window. A man in an orange vest rolled it down, clearly half asleep. I explained in a low voice that I had a hitchhiker in my car who was acting strange and that I needed help. The guy stepped out with me. We walked back to my car, but when we got there, the passenger seat was empty. The man was gone. His bag, his jacket, everything. The door was shut, not even left open. The worker looked around and said he hadn't seen anyone leave. We searched the area for a few minutes, shining flashlights into the trees and checking behind the vending machines, but he had vanished. Just like that. I was shaken, but nothing bad had happened, at least not yet. I thanked the worker and got back in my car. I drove home looking in the mirrors the whole time. When I finally got back to my apartment around 2:30 a.m., I went straight inside and locked every door and window. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to the police station and reported the incident. I didn't have much to give them, just a description and the direction we were heading. They noted it and told me there had been no recent crimes reported in that area. A few days later, I got curious. I searched online for missing persons, hitchhikers, anything. That's when I found an old article about a man who escaped a survivalist cult about 2 years ago. He matched the description almost perfectly. Same coat, same bag, same scruffy beard. He'd been seen heading south. Now I don't know what to believe. Was he dangerous, or was he just scared of me? Same way I was scared of him? Maybe we both thought we were in danger. Maybe we both were. But one thing I do know, I don't stop for hitchhikers anymore. And I don't drive that highway at night unless I absolutely have to. Before we dive into the next horror story, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you never miss an upload. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, share it with your friends and family, and drop a comment with your suggestions. I'd love to hear from you. We were driving back from my cousin's house. It was almost 10:30 p.m. The family dinner had gone longer than expected, and by the time we packed up and got on the road, the sky was already black. My wife, Nyla, was in the passenger seat half asleep, and the kids were in the back, both with their heads leaning against the windows. Our SUV had been reliable for years, and the drive home was only a couple of hours. I preferred taking the old highway. Less traffic, smoother drive, but I knew parts of it went through isolated areas, far from towns and gas stations. Still, I'd driven it plenty of times before. nothing ever happened. About 45 minutes into the drive, I noticed something strange. The engine felt heavier, not loud or broken, just slower. At first, I thought it was the road. It had started sloping slightly uphill, and maybe I hadn't noticed. But even after we crossed the incline, the SUV still felt off. I glanced at the dashboard. No warning lights. The fuel gauge was fine, but I could feel the drag in the steering, like something was resisting. I didn't want to alarm Nayla, so I kept quiet and continued driving, but I turned off the music to listen closer. A faint ticking sound was coming from under the hood. That's when I decided to pull over and check it out. We stopped at a wide shoulder near a stretch of abandoned farmland. On the left, the road continued into the hills, and on the right was a huge patch of overgrown orchard. I remembered it from years ago when it was still active. Rows of apple trees, neat fences, and a small wooden signboard that used to read Ibrahim and Sons Orchards. Now it was just weeds and broken branches. I put the car in park and told Nyla I was going to check the engine. She nodded sleepily. I stepped out into the quiet night. There was no wind, no traffic, nothing. Just that kind of silence that makes you feel like you're being watched, even when you're alone. I opened the hood and aimed my phone flashlight at the engine. I'm no mechanic, but I've handled a few issues before. Nothing seemed obviously wrong, but the ticking was there, faint and rhythmic. It didn't seem dangerous, but I wasn't sure if driving further would make it worse. While I stood there thinking, I noticed a soft glow between the trees to the right. It looked like a small fire. Not a huge one, just a flickering orange light, maybe from a campfire or lantern. I squinted. There was movement near it. At first, I thought it might be an animal, but then I saw a figure, a person, standing near the light. Too far to see clearly, but close enough to make out the silhouette. Someone was there. That made me uncomfortable. I shut the hood quietly and walked back to the driver's seat. Nyla sat up. "Is it okay?" she asked. "Not sure," I said, getting in. "Engine's acting weird. And there's someone out there, near the orchard." She turned around and looked at the kids, then back at me. "Should we call for help?" "Not yet," I replied. "Let's wait a bit. Maybe it'll cool down. If not, I'll call someone." Just then, headlights appeared behind us. A car was coming down the road. I watched it in the side mirror. It slowed down as it passed us, then stopped a few meters ahead. A man got out. He was alone, holding something metallic. At first, I thought it was a tool. Maybe he'd noticed the car and wanted to help, but he didn't wave, didn't call out, just started walking toward us. I told Nayla to stay inside and lock the doors. I stepped out slowly. "Everything all right?" I called. The man stopped a few feet away. "Car trouble?" he asked. His voice was flat, no emotion. He still hadn't raised his free hand or even looked me straight in the eyes. "Yeah," I replied, keeping my tone casual. "Engine's ticking, not sure why." He looked past me toward the SUV. "Family inside?" That question made me nervous. I nodded slowly. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked. I hesitated. "Appreciate it, but I've already checked, just waiting to see if it settles." He stood still for a moment. Then I noticed movement in the orchard again. Two more figures stepping out of the trees, slowly approaching the road. I realized they'd been waiting, watching. "We should probably get moving," I said, stepping back toward the driver's side door. He didn't say anything, just stood there, watching me. His grip on the metal object, now clearly a crowbar, tightened slightly. I got in quickly and locked the doors. Nyla had already grabbed her phone. "There are more," she whispered, pointing toward the trees. I turned the key. The engine struggled for a second, then roared to life. Relief washed over me, but I didn't waste time. I slammed into drive and hit the gas. As we sped forward, the man jumped back. I didn't look at the rearview mirror. We drove in silence for the next 5 minutes. The kids were awake now, confused and scared. Nala kept looking behind us. I didn't stop until we reached a small fuel station. It was closed, but there were cameras and a street light. We parked near the pump. I called the police and gave them the location of where we had stopped. They said they'd send a patrol. We waited there until an officer arrived. He took our statement and drove back toward the orchard to check it out. We didn't hear back that night. Next morning, an officer called to say they found tire marks in the mud near where we stopped, and footprints. Multiple sets, no sign of the men. He said they may have been targeting late-night travelers. We had just been lucky. I haven't taken that road again, and I never stop near dark orchards anymore. It was supposed to be a simple night. I'd been waiting all week for Friday. My friend Omar had invited me to spend the night at his place. He lived about 40 minutes away from my house, just on the edge of town. We had plans, movies, junk food, and a new horror game he downloaded. I finished dinner early, told my mom where I was going, and left the house around 9:30 p.m. It was cool outside, just a light breeze, and the roads were mostly empty, like they usually are in our part of town after dark. I borrowed my dad's old silver sedan for the drive. The first 20 minutes were uneventful. I was on the usual route, a 2-lane road cutting through a mix of open fields and small wooded patches. I played some low music through my phone, just enough to keep me awake and focused. But then I reached a split in the road. The left path was clearly marked, the one I usually take, but it was blocked with red cones and a temporary sign that read, "Road closed, construction, use detour." I hesitated. I'd never taken the right side before, but the detour sign pointed that way. I followed it, figuring it would connect back to the main road soon. The road narrowed as I went, and the trees got denser on either side. The GPS on my phone stopped updating, stuck on the last known location. I kept going, thinking it wouldn't be long. But 10 minutes later, I was still driving through what felt like the middle of nowhere. No lights, no other cars, just that gravel road and the sound of tires crunching over it. Up ahead, I spotted lights, warm yellow ones that looked like they were coming from a house. It stood near the edge of an orchard, surrounded by tall grass and a few old trees. The place looked lived in, not abandoned or creepy. I figured it was worth asking someone for directions. I slowed the car and pulled over to the grassy patch beside the house. The porch light was on, and I could see a shadow moving inside. I stepped out and walked toward the wooden steps. Before I could knock, the front door creaked open, and a man stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, maybe in his late 40s. He wore an old flannel shirt buttoned up to the top and jeans. His beard was thick, but neatly trimmed. He gave a small smile and said, "You lost, son." I nodded. "Yeah, sorry to bother you, sir. I took a detour and my GPS isn't working. I'm trying to get to Cedar Grove. My friend lives there." He looked out past the trees and scratched his neck. "That detour won't get you there. You're about 15 miles off now. Signal gets patchy this way. You can come in and use the landline if you want. I've got a map too." I didn't want to be rude, and he seemed helpful enough. I stepped inside. The house smelled of wood smoke and something else, maybe old furniture. The living room had worn-out couches, a coffee table with some newspapers, and a shelf of books. A fire crackled in the brick fireplace. It felt lived in, but quiet. Too quiet. I didn't see or hear anyone else. No TV, no music, not even the faint sound of footsteps from upstairs. He walked into the next room and gestured for me to follow. "Phone's here. I'll get that map." I picked up the old beige phone and dialed Omar's number. No dial tone. I hung up and tried again. Still nothing. Meanwhile, the man came back with a folded up map and laid it out on the table. "You took this turn here," he said, pointing with a thick finger. "You need to backtrack about 6 miles and take the old highway exit." I nodded and thanked him. "The phone's not working, though." "Yeah," he said, a bit too casually. "Storm last week messed up some lines. Happens out here." I glanced at the walls. No family photos. No signs of anyone else living there. Not even a dog bowl or coat rack. It was just him, or maybe not. I thought I heard something, like a soft creak from the hallway behind me. The man noticed me looking. "Old house?" he said quickly. "Everything makes noise. Floors, pipes, you name it." I gave a polite smile, but something about his tone didn't sit right. I looked at the time, nearly 10:30. I needed to leave. "Thanks again. I should get going." He followed me to the door. "Be careful out there. These roads get darker than most." As I stepped out, I felt a chill. I walked quickly to the car and got in. I turned the key. Nothing. I tried again. Still nothing. The lights, the dashboard, everything stayed dark. I popped the hood and got out again, pretending I knew something about engines. The battery seemed fine, no loose cables. I went back inside the car and tried once more. Silence. Then I heard it, a soft knock on my window. It was the man. He motioned for me to roll it down. "Need help?" he asked, still smiling. "Car won't start," I said. "That's odd. Let me take a look." He walked to the front of the car, opened the hood, and bent over the engine. A minute later, he waved me over. I hesitated, but followed. He pointed to the fuse box. "Looks like one's missing. That'd do it." "Missing?" I asked. He nodded. "Strange, huh? You sure you didn't hit anything earlier?" I didn't respond. I backed away slowly. He didn't say anything else. I got back in the car and pretended to call someone on my phone. Still no signal. I stayed inside, locked the doors, and waited. He didn't return to the porch. I watched the farmhouse through the rearview mirror. No movement. No lights turning on or off. Just silence. After a few minutes, I heard a faint tapping sound, like something brushing against the back of the car. I didn't move. Then it stopped. A minute passed. Then a louder tap, this time from the side. I looked over. No one. I reached into the glove box and pulled out the flashlight my dad always kept there. I opened the door slowly and stepped out. The night was still. Too still. I walked around the car. Nothing. Then I noticed something odd near the back tire. Footprints. Several of them. Not just his. Someone else had been circling the car. And then I saw it. Through the orchard trees, maybe 50 feet away, a figure standing behind one of the trees. Still, almost hidden. I didn't wait. I got back in the car, locked the doors again, and kept my hand on the horn. If this was a trap, I needed to be ready to run. 10 minutes passed, then the front porch light turned off. Another 5 minutes. Then I saw movement, a flashlight beam sweeping through the orchard, slowly, deliberately. I ducked low in the seat. I couldn't tell if it was the man or someone else. Suddenly, a loud metallic sound, like something snapping or being pulled, came from underneath the car. I turned, trying to look under, but couldn't see much. Then the car jolted slightly. I didn't know what they were doing, but I knew I couldn't stay. I took a chance and ran. I opened the door, left the flashlight, and sprinted down the gravel road, away from the house. I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs burned and the house was no longer visible. Then I spotted lights, headlights, coming from a distance. I waved, yelled, and nearly collapsed as the car slowed. It was an older couple in a pickup. I told them I'd taken the wrong road, that my car broke down near a farmhouse. They looked at each other, then at me. The man said, "There's no farmhouse down that way, son. Not for miles," I pointed. "It's right there, near the orchard. Porch lights were on. Guy let me in." The woman in the passenger seat spoke. "That orchard's been closed for over 5 years. No one lives out there anymore." They let me in the truck and drove me to the sheriff's station. When I returned with 2 deputies later that night, the farmhouse was dark, deserted. The door was unlocked. The fire had gone cold. No phone, no map, no sign of the man. But in the dirt outside behind my stalled car, they found footprints, more than one pair, and near the fuse box, an empty spot where a fuse should have been. I never went back for the car. I never took that road again, and I never drive at night without double-checking every turn.